Erev Shabbos, everybody. This week's Parsha is out of Sh'lach. In Sh'lach, we have the unfortunate incident of the Meraglim, who came back with a very discouraging report about Eretz Yisrael, bringing Klal Yisrael to tears. And there were those amongst Klal Yisrael who said, "Let us return to Egypt." And this resulted in a decree from Hashem that this generation would not live to see Eretz Yisrael, although all the men between the ages of 20 and 60, they would perish and die in the desert. Klal Yisrael would wander for a total of 40 years. At the end of Parshas Sh'lach, we have the Parsha of Tzitzis, which is the third paragraph when we say the Shema. And at the very end, we have the verse, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am the Lord your God, Asher hotzesi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim, that I took you out of the land of Egypt, Liyos lechem le'elokim, to be a God unto you, a special, unique relationship. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am the Lord your God. So a few questions. First of all, what is this doing with the rest of Shema? The first paragraph of Shema is accepting upon ourselves the responsibility, the yoke, so to say, of serving God, acknowledging the one true God, our responsibility to appreciate and love our God, and the unique mitzvahs of saying the Shema, and the Tefillin, and Mezuzah. These are the mitzvahs we accept. In the second paragraph, we accept upon ourselves the responsibility of consequences, that for properly observing God's mitzvahs, we recognize there will be great reward. And if we intentionally disregard God's mitzvahs, there will be consequences. This we understand. This is so important in our servitude, our service. It's our mission to our Creator. The third paragraph contains the mitzvah of tzitzis, which is a fabulous mitzvah. It says the mitzvah of tzitzis is comparable to fulfilling all 613 of Hashem's mitzvahs. But so is Shabbos. Shabbos is also equivalent to fulfilling all of Hashem's mitzvahs, and Shabbos carries with it so much greater severity. Well, what does tzitzis have to do with the Shema, the element of Shema? That's question one. Number two, what does it have to do with our Parsha? Our Parsha is primarily about the spies. That's what it's all about. What is the Parsha of Tzitzis, that we have Tzitzis? What does it have to do with this, with the rest of the chapter of dealing with the spies? In the Sefer Kol Ben Yaakov, he asks a question. He says, the last verse, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I'm the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. He says, what's being said here? Isn't that the first of the 10 commandments? I'm the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt from a house of slavery. In the beginning of the 10 commandments, which we've already had in Parshas Yisro, in the book of Exodus, there we are introduced to this idea that God exists. He is the creator. He is the master. He is in control. He demonstrated all of this, that there is nothing in the universe that is independent of Hashem. That's the first of the 10 commandments. So what exactly is being said here? This is a repetition. In addition, the verse begins, I am the Lord your God, took you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. And it concludes, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am the Lord your God. Why is it repeating itself in the same verse? The Chavetz Chaim explains what was the basic mistake of the spies. The men who were chosen to be spies were righteous men chosen by Moshe Rabbeinu. With Moshe's incredible insight, he saw that these men were absolutely magnificent. As a matter of fact, I believe the Ramban says that the order in which they are named tells us the order of their greatness. And Kolev was the third who was named. These men were they were great, righteous, holy people. How could they make such a mistake and come back and speak ill of the land of Israel and discourage Klal Yisrael? Were on the threshold of entering the land of Israel. How could this be? Chafetz Chaim explains and says, what happened with the spies is something that faces and confronts us each and every day. The spies recognized and they said, here we're living in a desert, but look at the life and the existence that we have. We don't have to work. God brings us food every single day, not just any food, the mun, a spiritual food, satisfies us, only nutrients. There's no waste. It's a food that enables and enriches our spiritual capabilities. In addition, our thirst is quenched by miraculous water that comes from a rock that moves with us. The mun and the merit of Moshe, the water coming in the merit of Miriam. We drink this water, it is salubrious, it heals us, it is so healthy. And we're sheltered. All of our needs are taken care of. We live under the clouds of glory, a magnificent, we live in a realm unto ourselves. This is in the merit of Aharon. And what are we doing here in the desert? In the desert, we're not working, we're not shopping, we're not engaged in different being distracted. We're spending our lives constantly learning from Moshe, Aaron, Miriam. Could there be three greater shepherds, three greater leaders to influence and mold and shape our character and our minds and future generations? And we spend all day studying Torah. We're engaged in Torah study. That's what we're doing. We're living a spiritual existence in this world in which our attachment to God is greater than anyone can imagine. And we're ready to go into the land of Israel. When we go into the land of Israel, there will be no clouds of glory. There will be no well of Miriam. There will be no mun falling. On the contrary, we have to go and we have to work. We will not be able to spend our days immersed and engaged in Torah study and mitzvahs. We have to work. We're going to have to plow. We're going to have to sow. We're going to have to plant. We're going to have to harvest. We're going to have to thresh and winnow. We're going to have to take and the grains, and we're going to grind them and make them into flour, and we're going to have to knead the dough and make it into bread, and we're going to have to take the hides of the animals and make them into clothing. Here in the desert, the clothing was never soiled. As we grew, the clothing grew. Our shoes never wore out. We had no concerns. Not when we go in the land of Israel. When we go in the land of Israel, everything is going to change. We are going to now leave this spiritual existence, this utopian existence, and we are going to be thrust into an environment in which we have the responsibilities of daily life. And in addition, we're going to have to deal with our enemies. Now our enemies, they can't even find us. We're enclosed. We're in a cube of the clouds of glory that protect us. In Israel, we're going to have to go and engage in war after war. Yes, God will be with us. There's no question. But without Moshe, without Aaron, without Miriam, without these great leaders, are we going to be worthy of God's divine intervention? Who's going to pray on our behalf? Who's going to intercede as Moshe Rabbeinu did by the golden calf, as Aaron was willing to take responsibility for the sin? Who's going to be there for us to watch out over us as Miriam watched out and safeguarded Moshe when he was put into the Nile? We're going to be on our own. We're going to have to rely on our own merits. And we're human beings, and we're going to be subject to the responsibilities and the daily chores and the distractions and the evil inclination and the challenges and struggles. Are we not going to falter? Are we not going to sin? Are we truly going to be worthy in the eyes of God for his divine intervention? Are we not better off staying here in the desert, in this spiritual utopian realm? That, the Chafetz Chaim says, was the thought process of these righteous men. They were concerned that we would not be worthy of God's divine intervention. We're human. We're going to sin. And we're not going to have the great Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam to intercede on our behalf. Is it not better to remain here in a desert with the clouds of glory and the well of Miriam and the mun falling and being led by the greatest leaders that we could ever imagine? Are we not better off here? That was the underlying motivating factor that led them to even speak Lashon Hara about the land and even to express certain words, certain ideas that weren't truthful. And the true motivation was their fear. What fear? Fear that we will not be worthy of God's divine intervention. Indeed, the Kol Ben Yaakov says that the verse says, Ani Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God. I'm your Lord. I have a special relationship with you. Well, because maybe we're righteous. Because we stood at Sinai, we said, Nasa v'nishma, will accept your Torah. When we're righteous, God has a unique, special relationship with us. But what about when we sin? What about when we find ourselves in an environment which is foreign to everything that we hold true? It says in the portion of Shema, do not follow after your eyes and your heart that are leading you astray. The Kol Ben Yaakov says that means that there will be a period in our history in which we find ourselves, in which we are engulfed in an environment which is totally diametrically opposed to all that is sacred and holy in Judaism. We'll be in an environment in which there will be no morality, no integrity, no dignity. Human thought will be corrupt. And we find ourselves in that environment, and nevertheless we are told not to stray after what our eyes see. That means when we open our eyes, that's all you see in this world. You walk in the street today, what do you see? You have to walk with blinders. You have to walk with your eyes closed, so that because people are walking, they're not dressed properly, the language that they say, things that they do, it's so hard. We live in a world that is so corrupt of thought, corrupt of deed. It negates everything that is sacred in Judaism. And nevertheless, the Torah says, even in that situation, we need to remain loyal and faithful to God and not go astray after our heart and after our eyes. How do we prevent that? What do? It's almost impossible that the corrupt thought, the corruption shouldn't penetrate somehow into our minds. Is God going to reject us? The Kol Ben Levi says, the verse continues, I am the Lord your God. Not only when you are so observant and do mitzvahs, I took you out of Egypt. I took you out of Egypt, that in Egypt we know that Klal Yisrael, it was imposed upon them, and they were trained and indoctrinated with idolatry. And nevertheless, I took you out of Egypt. I was your God then. Okay, that was then. Well, what about today? What about when we find ourselves in such an environment in which there are Jews who don't even know that they're Jewish? They don't know what it means to be Jewish. They'll go marching with the Palestinians and speak out against Israel. They have no concept of Judaism. They're ashamed of their Judaism. What about today when we live in this cesspool and it permeates our very being? The verse concludes and says, Ani Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God. Why does it repeat itself? It repeats itself to tell us, not only am I the Lord your God when you're righteous or when you stumble from that which is imposed upon you, but even if you find yourself so totally lost because of the exile, the environment that you live in, I am still the Lord your God. And that's why this is here in this Parsha. In this Parsha of the spies, this last verse is the exclamation point of the mistake of the spies. We're living in a utopia. Yes, but God says go into the land of Israel. That can be a great utopia. Yes, but there we're going to be in an environment in which we're going to have to struggle day in and day out, and we're going to sin. Is God going to be with us when divine intervention when we sin? Yes, even when we find ourselves in the cesspool of depravity, the world we live in today, Ani Hashem Elekechem, I am the Lord your God, always, unconditionally. That's what this is doing here. That's why it's repeated, Ani Hashem Elekechem. That's why this verse is not teaching us what we learned in the Ten Commandments. In the Ten Commandments, we learned about the existence of God. Here, it's telling us that God's relationship and love for us is unconditional no matter what the circumstances. And now we can understand why this portion of Tzitzis, concluding with this mitzvah, is contained within the mitzvah of the Shema. The Shema, we accept upon ourselves the mission of serving God with his mitzvahs. We accept upon ourselves the consequences for our mistakes. And we are also accepting upon ourselves the knowledge that despite our mistakes, despite our flaws, despite terrible decisions that we make, Ani Hashem Elekechem, I am the Lord your God, always. No matter what happens, no matter where we find ourselves, no matter how many poor decisions we make, no matter how far we have strayed and distanced ourselves from our Creator, Hashem is there and will always be there for us. That's what this fundamental principle is telling us. The Vilna Gaon says that before we say the Shema, there is a bracha. In the morning we say, Ahava Rabba Havtanu. God has a great love for us. In the evening we say, Ahavas Olam. God's love is eternal. What does that mean? It's eternal. And why is that said at night? Because the nighttime, when we daven the Ma'ariv of night, represents our exile, the dark period of our existence. And nevertheless, Ahavas Olam. God's love is eternal. Even during the period of our darkest moments, the exile where we find ourselves today in the depths of depravity and corruption, Hashem's love is boundless. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay Jewish. Have a wonderful Shabbos.